Welcome, lovely one, to the Meant for More podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford, and I am building the world's most empowering Meant for More movement, leading millions of heart-led purpose seekers from feeling insignificant to invincible. So I truly hope you enjoy this next episode. My next guest is Helen Oldham. I first met Helen when she was the chair of SmartWorks Leeds, and I was a speaker at one of the events. So we've, of course, stayed in touch, and I've since worked with Helen at her Athena conferences that are run by her company Lifted Ventures with Jordan, her business partner. Helen has had some very high profile roles, and in this conversation coming up, you'll hear where it all began, that one simple statement created her course of her life. And it's an inspirational journey that Helen is on and has been on. And we talk about where self-doubt plays out in life. Helen's business specialises in helping women become angel investors and also women owner founder businesses, how they get investment. So we go through all of the dynamics of that in this conversation. We explore doubt that isn't just to women, men get it as well. And we talk about the things that get in our way. So I hope you enjoy this next hour. I certainly did. Welcome, Helen, to the Meant for More podcast. And my heart is particularly full to have you on it. And I just want to remind you, the first time I met you, I'm sure you remember as well, but you had an impact on me. We met you were the chair of SmartWorks Leeds.
Yes.
And you were a vision of elegance, grace, and not only were you a vision of it, you were the embodiment of it. You are such experienced, skilled, eloquent, and heart-led leader. And it's just been such a privilege to have met you in 2020 on our journey to weave into each other still to this, I say to this day, like it's been years.
I know. And, thank you so much for those kind words. That means a lot. But you equally had a big impression on me, Lisa. So I think the work that you do, so the transformational work that you do, particularly with women, resonated with me. And the fact that you are able to tap into some of the sort of not just inner potential, but also our inner well-being and emotions as well, and able to do that not just at an individual level but in a group setting. And I saw you do that in a room of 50 women, and let me tell you, the conversations about the talk that you gave went on for a long time after that event ended.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to share this journey with you. And the spirit of the podcast is when we have these moments in life where we know we get a stirring, don't we? Or sometimes it's even like a big bang on the head that you are meant for more, or we're meant to show up in a more aligned way in life. And I just wondered in your life if you can pick a moment and share with us when you felt you were meant for more.
Yeah, so this is such an interesting question, and it led me on a bit of a journey thinking about this. And I think, like a lot of our adults' character and personality, for me, it started in childhood. I was very fortunate that my dad had me when he was very young. So he was 19 when I was born. So by the time I hit 5, 6, 7, 8, he was still in his 20s, highly energetic, and he was on the pathway of a very successful career himself. So he was a manager and then a director by the time he was 30. But he pretty much spent quite a lot of time with me in my early years. He preferred older children, and I was the eldest. So I got a lot of attention in those early years. And he pretty much said to me, that he thought I would make a great leader. And this is probably at 8 or
Wow,
7 or 8.
what a seed.
I'm struggling to remember exactly what the circumstances were, but the fact that he told me that and he had that belief in me, that stayed with me a long time. I mean, I've had lots of moments where I felt that I'm not capable, like everybody does. But I think the fact that he recognized something in me at that point actually meant that I went on to do sort of mini leadership roles in all sorts of environments. Like I was loved being in the Venture Scouts. It was a great outdoor environment, but I was fairly quickly made the chairperson of our group and sort of organising the kind of event schedule that we were running, that kind of thing. Uh, yeah, so I owe a lot, I think, to my dad in that. When you asked that question, it really made me think about that.
It's powerful, isn't it? The words that are said to us, and not just what's said, but when it's said and
Yes,
how it's said, that lasts a lifetime. I mean, parental language shows up a lot in people's behavior. Um, it's poignant, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, and I think knowing that you have something in you and you nurturing that from that kind of age is really important. Like I say, I've like everybody, I've had moments where I've thought I can't do this, and we'll probably come on to some of those a bit later. But I think the fact that he saw a germ of something in me is interesting. Maybe I was just bossy.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, two younger brothers, and they both say I'm bossy. So
Yeah, you were in charge. It's also interesting to think about how you then see the world once you hear those words. You know, I wonder, do you think that your mind would kind of filter through the eyes of, well, if I was a leader, I'd do this in this situation, even as a child?
I think so. I think it gave me the confidence to step forward into things, even when I felt nervous or lacking in confidence, and sort of trusting the universe that that would be okay. Um, I mean, yeah, I think it did give me courage. Um, and at that, I can remember feeling when he said that to me. I can do anything.
Yeah,
I can do, and I didn't even have a sense really of what a leader is. I mean, at 8, you don't, do you?
no, but you get I imagine knowing you as I do, it evokes a curiosity that we kind of use as a lens to look through, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it helped. I think one of my strongest personality traits is just determination, and I think it taught me fairly early on that if you're determined, you can often get quite a long way. I'm not saying you can just play determination and results will come, because that clearly isn't true. But it did help to build up some determination, resilience fairly early on, I think.
Yeah, I think determination is like an engine that sits within a machine rather than the whole vehicle, isn't it? Um, so where did that lead you to then? What did you study? I'm guessing you went to university.
So that is a long other part of this, another chapter of the story. I didn't go to university because
What an assumption I just made about you.
no, I did well at school, but my parents had a very tricky breakup when I was 17, and it derailed me for a bit. And I didn't fancy going off into an environment I didn't know. I didn't have any stable roots at that point.
Yeah.
I basically had to leave home because of the way that that played out fairly early. Um, and yeah, so I chose to go straight into a career. I think it's interesting now because more and more I think we're seeing parents thinking pragmatically about university and the benefits of that. But I was fortunate because I went straight into a career as a scientist because I did science A levels. Um, it was a very quiet environment where everybody just had their heads down and were basically studying slides and yeah, looking out for various looking out for indications of different changes in cell structures, basically. So it was a very sort of academic, quite and also quite productive environment. You had targets to achieve as how many slides you're going to look at, all that kind of thing. But I pretty much, after 82 years of that, having sort of recovered a little bit from my parents' breakup, realised that was not for me. They did offer to sponsor me for a university. And when I thought about it, I thought, I don't want to go back into education now. I feel like I've gone beyond that. So I looked around for another job, saw a job at the Harrogate Advertiser in sales. I had no idea what the job was whatsoever. I made a phone call to the office, because you had to call a number. I didn't realise, because I'd been sat in the quiet for 2 years, that they were going to start doing like a heavy interview with me on the phone. I panicked and put the phone down because I just wasn't prepared. Then I had a word with myself, and I suppose that determination thing kicked back in, and I thought, they probably won't remember me if I call back. And even if they do, I'll just have to bluff my way through that. So I prepared myself knowing that they were going to do that, went back on the phone, and then basically talked my way through into a proper interview, and then started at the Harrogate Advertiser in sales, a job my dad said I couldn't do at that point. So it's interesting. But at that point, I think it's because at that point I was quite introverted.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't think sales is for you. But what happened then was I thought, well, I'll show you your role.
And
And
where did it lead to? Because I think to dizzy heights.
so I mean, it started off, quite as what I thought would be a stopgap job. This is at the height of the media boom, I would say, in the 1980s. It was a really exciting environment. It was also quite a hard environment as well. It was very, very target led. And, if you didn't hit a target, you were out. But I managed to be one of those people who was quite quiet, but in the background did really well. Eventually, through sort of 2.5 years of being in sales roles, I was offered a managerial role. So at 25, I was managing quite a big team of salespeople, and I was one of the youngest and one of the few women doing that in this large organisation that owned the Harrogate Advertiser. And then moved. I mean, there was lots of twists and turns, but then eventually, 10 years later, having worked in 5 different companies that our parent company owned, I was asked to be the managing director of the Yorkshire Post, and said, "Oh, I can't do that. It was quite a big jump up from the job I was in. It was kind of a flagship job in the company. 2 very, very vociferous and big personality editors there too, who would
And
be
I
reporting directly
imagine,
to me.
say that again, sorry.
Who would report directly to me in this role. So
Wow. I would also imagine a lot of people wanting that job, a very sought
true,
after role.
so true, and a lot of people clearly thought that I wasn't the right person for it as well. So it was quite a lot to carry at the time.
So when you were offered it, had you gone for it, or had somebody said to
So
you, you'd be good at this, I'd like you in this role?
yes, that is exactly what happened. So my boss said to me, I'm about to make some changes. There's an opportunity for you to be the managing director of the Yorkshire Post. It was actually a regional job as well, so I was looking after other brands as well, but the Yorkshire Post part of it was the biggest. Yeah. So, but he believed in me, and when I said no, I can't do it, he said you can, and I'll be stood right behind you. I said, can I have a coach, please, to help me, because I think my confidence is holding me back. And he said straight away, yes, you can.
That's just
And
giving me
I was,
goosebumps.
which was really a really smart move on his part, because the coach then really helped me think about why my self-belief wasn't there.
How long ago was that, Helen?
So I would say that is in 2012.
Okay, yeah.
And very quickly, it's funny because I went from thinking I can't do it to fairly rapidly, then in 2 months, I'd put together this full proposal for him, that my boss, to show that we should move the building, which was quite a contentious decision at the time, that we should amalgamate these editorial roles, these two roles, into one, again, which was quite contentious because they were editors of two different brands with two different audiences, but there was also a massive amount of overlap in the resource below that. And I got that plan signed off super quickly, and like 6 months later, we had one editor, and we'd moved to a complete new site away from what was considered to be an iconic heritage building that the Yorkshire Post had been in since the 1970s.
Mm. And so I want to go back to because I think that moment where somebody offers somebody something and they say, I can't do it because they can't see themselves at that level. What was the shift in your mind? Because I think that happens frequently for women, where they block themselves with a no because they don't see it, but somebody else does. What shifted in you?
Basically, I just told myself to just take the next step forward, and not to worry about the 10 or 100 steps ahead of that. So I thought, just go into it, take a look at what you can see, and then take a step forward. And I think strategic planning has always been quite a strong skill set of mine. So I think my ability to see that those were the two things that were going to make the biggest difference. So there was no point in delaying. You might as well just get on and do all of that change all at once.
Yeah.
And then enable the organisation to move on. And we did have 2 very successful years after that.
Mm. And how long were you in that role for?
So it's an interesting question. I was in that pure role for 4 years, and we did well across all of that. And I picked up 2 big awards for being like the best operator at that level in the company, which was a pretty amazing event to be at a big awards night and be recognised in that way, especially as a woman, because they didn't have many women leaders at my level. Yeah, and then the company sort of reorganised itself. They also sent me off to Scotland at that point and said, you've done such a good job at the Yorkshire Post, we want you to go and take a look at the Scotsman now as well. So I was doing half a week in Leeds and then half a week in Edinburgh, and had a sort of similar, but by then I built a blueprint, so I felt a bit more confident in that one. I kind of just took the same approach there, and again turned it around from something that was making a loss to something that was making 3 million a year, which I was really proud of. And then the company shifted again. I mean, by this point, the sort of systemic changes in the market in terms of digital news dissemination was starting to really impact on the sector. And eventually, by the point of the time I left, I would say I was still the best operator in that space, but it's not much fun being the best operator managing decline.
Yeah. There's a brilliant, I guess, reflection I can see in, I think that often women think that they've got to have quite a big and bold masculine persona to lead. I don't know if that statement's correct, but what I see in you is a focus on the outcome and less about the noise that goes around it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some truth in that. There was a moment when I was at the Yorkshire Post where the team said to me, my team of directors, I had 5 who were all guys, and they said to me, we were doing reviews, and I like to make sure that it was sort of 360, so they also gave me feedback, and they said, we think you're great, but sometimes you look like you're lacking a bit of confidence in yourself, and that makes us wobble a tiny bit. So you just need to show up and be really confident because we believe in you. And I think that was really helpful feedback from them. Um,
And was it true? Were you lacking a bit of confidence? Oh,
Sometimes with them as individuals, they were big personalities. The two editors as well, they were extremely clever guys. And I think sometimes I occasionally have an issue with people who I think are super bright. I'm worrying about my own intelligence, versus then I also find people like that really fascinating, really interesting. And maybe I can give them a bit too much space sometimes because I'm in awe of their intellect. Um, and that doesn't always transfer to well into business environments, particularly highly commercial ones. So I took their advice, and I was a lot clearer, I think, from that point of view in explaining exactly where my thinking was coming from, but also opening up my thinking to challenge as well, because, actually being vulnerable in that point in a visible way is actually stronger than going away and internalizing a lot of that, which I think is what I was doing at that point.
mm. Would you say you are an introvert?
It's a very again, good question. On the sort of Myers-Briggs spectrum, I'm sat right in the middle, and I've done the test quite a lot of times, and I'm always in the middle. So that means I can do both. I can show up and speak, do some public speaking, and most of the time be fine. But I find if I'm in an environment where there are a lot of people and there's a lot of conversations in a day, I need to go away and decompress. Like I'm a reflector as well, so my brain actually needs to go through every single conversation and unpick what was said and whether I need to do something. And so, like a big event like our Athena conference, it will probably take me a week to um to replay some of the things that happen in that environment, especially because there's so much energy there.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, I get my energy from being by myself. I like to run, I like to walk. I like that quiet, a little bit of quiet space. Um,
I'm exactly the same. People are surprised to hear it. I mean, I would say over the years, I think I faked being an extrovert because my dad had once said, "Oh, look at Lisa, she's so confident." And then, so I thought, well, that was a way to stay, um, for him to stay proud of me. But I think, whilst I am confident, and being introvert isn't the absence of confidence, is it? But I,
yeah,
like you, I need lots of spaciousness in my own mind when I'm preparing something, planning something. I like to create a focus, and I will recover alone. I
yeah.
need that time to be alone. Um, and that's a misconception, isn't it? That introverts lack confidence, because that's not the case, is it?
No, it definitely isn't. And I mean, I still can get energy from being with other people. I do really like being, you know, being meetings in person and being at events. I do enjoy all of that. But I think I've learned that if I can, I need a tiny bit of unwind space afterwards. I know that's not always possible. But yeah, you're right. It's possible to be confident and to be an achiever, even if you are an introvert. But I think learning about your own energy levels and how to manage those is something that I think we get better at as we're older. Um, and, you know, I've found that I need to be more conscious about that now
Yes.
that I'm a little bit older. But I still find, I'm not to say that I still find a lot of energy. I'm like pleasantly surprised that I've reached this age and that I'm still very active in terms of the
I
sort
thought
of,
that was the end of the sentence. I'm pleasantly surprised I've reached this age.
well,
Full stop.
yeah, indeed I am. Yeah, yeah. Well, like someone said to me, because I was having a tiny bit of a moan about that I had a tiny bit of knee pain, really small, and she said, "Well, it's better than the alternative." And I thought that's so true.
It's one way of looking at it. And
It's,
so, where did those roles then take you?
Okay, so,
You,
yeah, so once I had reached that level inside this company, which was called Johnson Press, I was then on the management board of this company, which was one tier below the main board. There was a group of 10 of us on there. There was one other woman who was the HR director and myself. Um, and it, inside the organization at that time, there was quite a lot of challenge around cost, around market penetration, and basically the structural changes that we talked about before. And I found it difficult to work with that leadership team, because there was quite a big focus on in external comms, which I thought was actually masking our need to actually go and fix the plumbing and try and take people with us. So eventually we agreed to part, after sort of 6 months of talking, we agreed that it probably was best if I left, and I was happy to go at that point. At that point, I wasn't running a team like the Yorkshire Post. I'd sort of stepped one step away from that, and that was what I really enjoyed. So I think it made sense for everybody. Then had sort of 6 months off, went through my bucket list. I went on a yoga retreat, did loads of amazing things that I hadn't had time to do before that, and then sort of tentatively started feeling my way into what I might do next. I trained as a coach. I sort of started to set up an angel network with someone that I'd met while I was at the Yorkshire Post. And we'd set up an incubator inside there, sort of helping startups. And I realized that I'd always been interested in innovation. I think one of the things that led me to having some of the big roles at the end was the way that I managed some of our digital operations and how I'd managed to transform some of those news environments into something more in tune with the modern world. We invited these sort of media startups into our environment, and then tried to get them to integrate with some of the things that we were doing. So I had this interest in startups, and I formed an angel network with a guy who was also interested in that space. And it went on basically within having gone from knowing nothing about this environment in, I think, 2 years, 3 years, we got to a point where we were recognised as one of the most active angel networks in the UK outside of London. And we won a big national award recognising the fact that we were creating lots of impact in an area where early stage capital, so angel investing, was not that well developed or visible. So it was helping to fix some of the sort of economic gap at that early stage of the market.
Which leads you to where you are and how I know you today, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So through that, I also started to have a realization that in that wider marketplace where we had both, we were non-gender specific, but essentially we attracted a lot of male angels to the network because there's more of an established pathway to angel investing for guys. It's typically they know other people who invest. And so there's a bit of a come along with me, mate type of environment there, which means that it gradually, organically develops more and more angels, which are typically white guys. And that they were amazing. I mean, I think the fact that they backed so many startups alongside us was phenomenal. But it meant that when we did bring female founders in, it wasn't always the environment that we would have wanted to land them into. Because if you're a woman building innovation that is directed at women in terms of improving either well-being or health or consumer-led products that are built by women, you don't always have the right questions or expertise in the room. to be able to support someone building those sorts of businesses. So at that point, I decided we needed to set up a separate organisation specifically for women, and that was called Funder North. Again, it was groundbreaking at its time because it brought together a whole load of women in venture capital. So women who were typically in the minority in their organisations, but were very keen to support more female founders, but needed a little bit of support to get their voices heard. And to get more influence, even though they didn't always have a seat at the decision-making tables in these organisations. And it was a really amazing group of women. And we also formed an angel network just of women at that point. But to cut a long story short, that organisation was owned by the guy that I set the original network up with. And, he had his own set of objectives, and he was much keener on the original organisation, which was non-gender specific, in growing that. So we decided to part company at that point. And then Jordan, who had been working with me in both North Invest and Funder North, she and I then went and set up the organisation that you see today, which is Lifted Ventures. And we pretty much distilled everything that we'd learned from Funder North into that and then improved it one step again. So it's a group of women angels who back female founders. And we've built out quite a well-developed education business as well that not only trains women how to be angel investors, but also supports women to get investment ready as well. So we're kind of doing supply and demand.
God, there's so much I want to say. One is a reflection on how you are not afraid. I mean, that's an assumption, to keep realigning with what is right for you and what is needed at the time. Gone are the days, I think, where we can say, no, I've promised to do this, I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to see it through and see it through and see it through. And then we do things we stay with things that we were never meant to stay with for that long. And then it causes us quite a lot of unwellness on lots of levels. But what I have enjoyed listening to with you is that sensing when life has another lane, another direction for you, and you seeing the opportunities and going with it.
Yeah, so I think there's some truth in that. I mean, I also do have a problem with letting go. And I think I've realised that more in the last 4 years than I've ever done before. And I think that partly comes from the sort of parental breakup that I went through, in wanting to hold things close, and be in control of things. And sometimes that does mean that you hold on a bit too long. But I recognise that in myself now, and I also know that you need to go through a process when you're letting go. And part of that is grieving what you've left behind, and letting yourself move through that, and then starting to think about what is left then, in terms of the relationships that you've built up, some of the skills that you might have grown, but also the thinking as well, and how you can apply that to a new environment. I mean, I really like problem solving, and I really like strategizing. So for me, stepping into something new is always energizing. But stepping into something new, I don't find too difficult once I've made a decision to do it.
Well, you've got a great success model of, I'm just going to focus on the first two steps. You've got a great thinking model that keeps you present and in your expertise, and then you have this great gift of gathering, where's my gap now that I'm in it, and now I'm in it and I can see what the facts are of where my gap is. Then how can I educate myself or surround myself with people that so I think you have a great is a great success model, where other people might look too far ahead and rule themselves out because they've looked too far ahead, and they don't realize that sorry, that's my shoulder, in the journey to that point in the future where they're not yet qualified, they become qualified either through experience or...
Absolutely. I mean, I do think it is a fear management model as much as anything else, because you can only then worry about that one step. And actually, I find I want to do well, so therefore I put quite a lot of pressure on myself. I think that also comes from my dad saying that to me when I was quite young. That has meant I've always pushed myself quite hard. But I find that staying on the right side of anxiety, so having enough anxiety to want to do well and think about things logically and creating momentum and progression is really helpful.
And then not too much where it creates paralysis.
Absolutely. So
I'm cocktail. Yeah.
I'm never in the paralysis bracket. I'm always wanting to take the next step forward. And I, like you, I've done a bit of coaching, and I find a lot of, procrastination is quite prevalent in women because they want everything to be perfect before they take the next step. And sometimes we have to learn in taking the step.
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes from self-trust, doesn't it?
It does.
When you lift your foot up, you trust that it's going to land somewhere, and wherever it lands, I know I'm going to be okay. It's either going to land on the stepping stone that I'm aiming for, or it's going to land in the mud at the side, or it's going to land in the stream. But I know I'm going to be okay with where it is. It doesn't. I'm not only going to be okay if it lands exactly where I want to place it.
Absolutely. So I think that open to opportunity is being open to opportunity is part of it as well. So not actually, like you say, knowing exactly where your foot's going to land, but if someone says, why don't you land it on this podium where we're going to pass you a huge trophy? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Or you might step off a cliff. Who knows? But trusting that you're going to learn in the process, and you'll be fine. Thinking about times when you've done that before, and then it has been okay.
Yeah. And that in it landing in a slightly different place actually was the best thing for you at the time, because you gathered some knowledge that you wouldn't have had that helps you with steps 6 and 7 in the future.
I know there's some amazing research, isn't there, that says that when you ask anybody, but particularly women, what do you think you're going to achieve in the next 2 years? They might tell you a version that you think, I think you could be being a bit more ambitious than that. And then when you say to them, well, what have you achieved in the last 2 years? And they actually reflect on what they've done. It's amazing, isn't it? We always underestimate how much we've achieved in the recent past. Versus what we think we're capable of in the same period going forward.
When I'm speaking, coaching and training, every single one of them starts off with a nice big goal. And by the time they've finished speaking their paragraph, they've shrunk it to something that does not serve the purpose that the goal was there to ignite. I was speaking to a girlfriend on the phone yesterday, and she owns a shop, and she's a really amazing woman. She's been a teacher, she's been an actress, and she wants to find a new home and maybe do something with the shop or not. But in this new home, she wants it to have a space where she can run retreats, and she wants to run 6 retreats a year. So and this just came out with me saying to her, your videos are great, but use a microphone, because sound quality matters above visual quality. And so me just saying that brought out this big goal of hers in a voice note back to me. And I said, oh, that's brilliant. Now, you don't need to wait until you've got a home. Instead of waiting till then, could you consider running one retreat in the next 4 months? This is just me doing girlfriend talk. It's not even coaching.
Sounds like the same thing to me.
Could you do that? Because right now you think you have to have all of this in place, but what would it look like if you were to do one and really loved it? Her voice note back to me was, well, I could do this and I want to do this and I want to do this. And then, but the thing is, we do run and I could do 1 day retreat. And then I do evenings from the shop though. Yeah. And when she'd hung up the call, she'd scaled it right back to what she already does. The girl, I just left her a little message back saying, I don't know if you know that, but in that one message, you went from shrinking your goal from being 6 a year to 1 to just keeping on doing what you're doing now. And she sent a note back. She said, oh yeah, you are so right. Thank you for that reflection. I'm going to sit with that now. And so that's just in girlfriend talk yesterday, but I see that all the time. But you are in the thick of it, Helen, with women angel investors and with women looking for investment so they can make the impact in the world they want to make. What is it that you see holds them back as a whole the most? What's the number one? If I see the work you're doing as being the accelerator and then our internal world creates the brakes.
So there's a number of different answers I could give you here, but I think actually the biggest challenge, but also an opportunity, because this is fixable, is knowledge and networks. I think we don't have the same networks of support sometimes in the business environment. And particularly in the world we're in, which is fast growth, early stage startups, there is a big community of male founders who give each other support, and a bit of competition, I think, which means that world is quite fast paced and feels like there are a number of places to turn if you do need a bit of help. For women, those networks are not as well evolved. And I think because women are a little more risk aware. So again, there's a lot of research that say that women tend to worry about risk taking because of the impact it might have on their family, on their time, on their ability to look after other people, as well as being successful business people. So that means that women typically need to know more of the sort of next steps and be familiar with what we've been talking about progression, haven't we? You probably need to know the 3 steps ahead and start preparing and then take the steps. But they haven't got the knowledge to know what those are. So one of the cool things that we do is just map that out really clearly. And once you spend time with a female founder, they're like, oh, I completely get that. I can do that. Like, that's not complicated. And break it down in that way.
I think there's something also that in giving the knowledge, but also holding space whilst they absorb what you're telling them. And then I think what happens next is they rehearse it in their mind, then they see themselves doing it, then they believe they can do it. But I think that comes from you holding space for them as all that goes on.
It is, yeah. And we create mainly all-female environments because we know that women are more likely to share their real innermost concerns and worries in that environment. It's a safe space to do it. And you can get to that point of sharing the real issues faster. And also we know that female peer-to-peer support also helps to accelerate learning in that respect as well. So you're right, we do create those environments. But then the other amazing thing, I think, is that women are twice as likely to pass that knowledge on. So the ripple effect of that, I think, is pretty significant. But we so privileged because you get to see women coming into our education programs full of self-doubt. And usually the first session is really just letting go of all of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot.
Yeah.
when you hear about what people are worrying about. And it is generally a balance of things that are going on for them in their personal lives and their family and friendship groups, and then business concerns as well. And then if you layer onto that the economic environment as well, that's a lot. So letting go of all of that and then creating an environment where, you can really go for those big goals that you have, and being able to tap into what is actually possible in terms of their idea and their ability to deliver it, which is usually, I would say, 10 times what they think they're capable of when they come into the beginning of it.
Do you think that women don't recognise their self-worth, and so therefore set goals that are aligned with their perception of their self-worth? Or should I ask a question of where does self-worth play out in the whole thing?
I think that's a tricky question, because I've seen women with high self-worth who still have more potential, um, haven't given themselves the opportunity to play into that space sometimes. I mean, I think it's more complex than that. It's because we need to show up as multiple versions of ourselves and be good in all of those different environments. And, being realistic, there's no way in a million years that you can be 100% present as a mother or partner or sister and have a big friendship group and run a business from scratch at fast pace. So being kind to yourself and saying, I cannot be all of those things. Today, I'll just be one of them and I'll give that everything, is probably helpful in thinking about how to break that down a little bit more. Some women do, I would say some women do have self-worth issues because they've not had the advocacy that they needed at the right point in time. But I don't actually think it's actually completely about self-worth. It's more about having the weight of multiple responsibilities, and wanting all of that to be okay, worrying that it might not be. And so that can play out as self-worth, or it can play out as a lack of confidence as well. But and I know that when you actually sort of get the opportunity to peel away some of the layers of that, there is an innate confidence there that we all have, that we can tap into, and it might surface in different ways for different people, but it is there given the right environment. I think it's also a little bit not always giving women good service to talk about confidence and self-worth, because it doesn't always play out well in the wider environment when you talk to mixed gender environments.
I've seen men. I think self-worth is more on an unconscious level rather than no, I value myself. I think I'm good. I think everybody's self-worth is set on an unconscious level. And then we see where it's at with the reflection of what plays out in their life. Because I've seen men, when I worked for a construction company, I coached and put in a culture, and I've seen men who got jobs that they really wanted and were treated with such respect that they sabotaged it because they just couldn't identify with the respect and what they were receiving with how they internally saw themselves. So I think I've probably phrased the question a little bit more vaguely, but I hear what you're saying about the conversation. Yeah.
And so I think we're defining it slightly differently, but I don't think we're doing women a service sometimes when we talk too much about confidence in the broader environment, because I think sometimes people can hook on to that and feel that that is the only issue, but actually there are other things at play here. The fact that there is not enough investment going to female founders, and some of that is because of, again, systemic challenges in the system that are, this is a world mainly dominated by men. it's unconscious bias. All the men I've met in this environment are supportive of the agenda. They want to do the right thing. But it's that, again, complexity that sits underneath that as to why sometimes that doesn't play out in the outcomes. And that's going to
The
take a while.
percentage. You told me the percentage. I was staggered and I can't remember.
So I can tell you that. I mean, we're on a mission to stop talking about the percentage, because I do think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Also, it's been so overquoted. I think some people have come to a resting point of thinking it's not an acceptable norm, but a norm. So we prefer to talk about the fact that women are more likely to exit businesses. Statistically, they're more likely to get an exit, and they're more likely to get an exit more quickly. So you should be backing women because it's the right thing for your portfolio. You'll get the portfolio benefits, which is essentially what all fund managers and angel investors are looking for. But sat behind that, the figure is, I think it's actually shifted to 4% now, but it's 4% of VC funding goes to female founders. And I think 18% goes to mixed gender teams and female founders. So even if you take the 18%, it's chronically low compared to the amount of funding that goes to male founders. And typically male founders are rewarded bigger sums of money in investment rounds as well. So that is the problem we're wanting to fix. But I think we want to lead with the why, and stop thinking about it as altruism. Like, this is not because it's a gender political issue and we want to showing to be doing the right thing. It's because it actually makes sense from a business perspective to do this, and we know that will release a huge potential into the UK economy. I mean, even 4 years ago, that was estimated at 250 billion.
What is it about women that have proven to be more likely to exit, to get the return on investment within the time scale than men?
I think there's a number of different factors here. One is women are good at building diverse teams. Diverse teams, statistically, if you look at McKinsey, are more likely to be successful. So I think when they looked at the top 200 FTSE companies, the top 25% had more diverse leadership teams than the rest. They're more likely to have, and again, this is a generalism, but they have the people skills, the softer skills that are required these days to build high-performing teams.
And don't you think, sorry to interrupt you, but don't you think the term is accurately, it's what is technically known as softer skills, and yet they are anything but soft, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are, the softer skills are bringing out the best in people, belief, growth, encouragement, reflection, continuous improvement, language, communication, body language, spirit. And yet it is easier to let all that go and just become transactional and mechanical and fail than dare to really become an expert in the softer skills that are they can be very confronting, but require such a lot of courage to fully participate in.
I would totally agree. So you're right. My language wasn't the best.
No, your language is absolutely technically correct.
But I completely agree with you. I mean, I think those skills are absolutely essential for building businesses in the world today. And if you look at the needs of Gen Z and millennials in the way that they want to engage and participate in their work organizational structures, communication is number one leadership quality. So I think that helps. I also think because women know that they need to overperform to do well, that is why we're seeing some of these organizations do so well that are female led. Um, yeah. And, I was at a big event yesterday and reflecting on the fact that actually in Leeds alone, 5 amazing female founders have landed funding in the last 2 years, including companies like Little Journey, Blind Ethics, WAC, um, the co-founder of Data Cities helped to get some investment. So I think the world is changing, but we need to promote those successes a bit more. And we also, slightly going off at a tangent here, but we also need to make sure that we know women who are investors as well. Like if you go into any city and say, who are the angel investors that you know, they'll give you the names of 5 white guys. We want to make sure that we're promoting the women we know who are in that space too in the same way. Because the more profile we can give them and their activity, the more likely it is to draw other people to thinking that this could be something that they could achieve too.
Oh, I think what you're doing is amazing. Can you just share some of the upcoming events that you are running? And if there is anybody out there who is a female founder looking to grow and develop their skills and business, is there a criteria for them to meet?
Yes, so let's start with our event schedule. Like we have 3 main events a year. We've settled on that being the place where we can create the biggest impact. And they have 3 different audiences. The event that you and I are very excited about that's happening next Tuesday on October the 7th at Nexus is a female founder conference. It's the biggest one of its kind outside of London. We've got more than 150 sign-ups for that. So excited to see that come together. And there's a whole agenda of both amazing input from people like Lisa in terms of mindset and thinking about how to show up well in this space, and then some technical support about investment, how to grow talent, how to think about your finances, all the practical stuff, plus all of that energy you get from other female founders being in the same room. We have an event specifically for women in venture capital, and that's about supporting them to progress in their careers, ensure their voices are heard, and create community amongst that group. And that's called Athena VC. And then we have another event, which is specifically for women angel investors. Again, it brings together our group of active investors and people who are thinking about it, to help encourage them to come forward, learn a bit more about it, and group sort of be part of our amazing organization. I mean, there's some absolutely phenomenal women in there, and just spending time with them is part of the privilege, I think, of a job like this.
The energy at these events are really incredible. There's a lot of spirit, but there's a lot of openness and honesty and sharing and a lot of synergy. In the workshops that I've run at them, it's been really humbling to set such a trusting and safe space for them to be in, where they can be honest about what their thoughts are, and then how everybody else in the room shares the same concerns, the same worries, the same inner thoughts. And I think when you have that level of consciousness, then you have empowerment.
Yes.
I don't believe in empowerment without consciousness. And so, yeah, what you create is phenomenal.
Thank you. And then you asked on the founder side, what are we looking for? Well, we run education programs. You don't need to be at any specific level for those. Just have a look at our LinkedIn channel. You'll see what kind of education programs we're running, which are near you. If you're applying for investment, then there's a number of core things we're looking for. One is like your background as a founder. Like, where did this journey start? Why are you doing this? Your purpose? And do you have the knowledge and skills required to grow a business beyond this early stage. And if you don't, and a self-awareness of that and how you're never going to navigate that, is your idea. So I actually think that's the number one decision. Your idea also needs to be unique and defensible. We need to know that there's not going to be an overt amount of competition in your space, and that there's a big market potential, because typically investors are looking for a 10 times return from their investment. So that means your business needs to show growth at 10 times. So equity investment's not for everybody, Lisa. I think that's also a myth that, a rite of passage is that you must have equity investment. Not all businesses need that. Some grow organically and never take a pound of external money. So then you've got a strong business plan. I think those are the core things that we're looking for. And typically we see that come together in a pitch deck. Yeah, so having those components ready to talk to us about is super important. But I think just in some respects, more importantly, we're interested in educating women to be angels, because a lot of women don't have any visibility that this is an option available to them. We would say that any professional woman can do a bit of angel investing. Everybody should try and invest a little bit of their spare income in high risk. And angel investing is high risk. It comes with that caveat. But if you don't do something high risk with some of your money, you're never going to get an extraordinary outcome.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why women, when you look at their wealth journey, the trajectory of that as you get older is probably a this kind of trajectory, but a guy's is more like this, because we have typically we probably experienced some kind of gender pay gap at some point, however evolved our organisation is. We may well take time out to care for family members or have children, or need a reason to step out. And the gap gets bigger at that point because other people progress while you're not there, sadly. And there's still no mechanism for equalising that. And caregiving is still mainly the realm of women in the UK, unlike Scandinavia, which is a bit more enlightened. And then the fact that we don't invest, or we don't have the same knowledge around investment, so we don't put money into high risk, is also holding us back. And it's one of the levers we can pull to try and correct some of the other challenges that we might have in building wealth. So we say you don't need to have a huge amount of money. You can put as much or as little as you want into investing. And typically the women in our network will put something like £2,000 into an investment. They're not putting hundreds in. That is a myth.
Interesting.
The value of that is that we are often first movers in a round. And in the world of investment, momentum is everything. Once something starts to gather some momentum and progression, it attracts other investors. And so we often are that catalyst for much bigger rounds. We've invested alongside other angel networks. We've invested along VC funds and gained credibility for being able to signpost what are really strong high growth opportunities into more traditional investment institutions. And at the moment, we're the only organisation like this in England outside of London that's women angels backing female founders. Yeah, so we break how to invest as well down into some bite-sized chunks over a 10 program workshop. So you get to see things like, what legal knowledge do I need? Explain to me the tax benefits. Also, it's highly tax efficient in the UK to invest. You can either get 30 or 50% back through the seed enterprise scheme every time you put money in. So essentially, you're investing in female founders rather than giving it to the taxman, which for me is a huge incentive.
I think you just sold it to everybody there in that one sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in closing, you've been so generous with your time. If you have a favourite tip to give to anyone, What is it?
I think it's don't think you need to do this all by yourself. Like, find community and find the people who are going to help you on the journey, and be open to some of that wisdom and support. One of my biggest failures is I don't like asking for help. I think particularly it's partly an age-related thing, that I was told that I pretty much had to look after myself as a kid. I'm not good at asking for help, but I know that when I do it, the outcome is exponential from what I'd expect. So that would be my one tip.
Completely relate. Completely relate. So ask for help, find a like-minded community. Thank you so much.
That's it.
We've scratched the surface, Helen. We've completely scratched the surface. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Wait.